Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the Mid-South Wrestling Center podcast. Today, we have a very special guest. He is a founding member of the Mid-South Trio, the Black Label Society. Please welcome into the Mid-South Wrestling Center podcast, Mr. Jason Peter Rose.
Thank you, buddy.
No
That was
problem at
nice.
all, brother.
I appreciate that. That was nice. I'm glad somebody still remembers.
Oh, yeah. Most definitely. So,
Can you hear me? Everything good?
I think everything's good. I guess
Cool.
we'll have to get a couple people in here and watch this, see if it's good on their end. But I guess we can just. I got a couple topics we're gonna go over.
Oh yeah, okay.
So the first topic of the day is like I asked everybody, what got you into professional wrestling and who were you trained by?
Oh man, that'll eat up some time. What got me into professional wrestling was I grew up. Well, I don't say I grew up. I lived in West Memphis, Arkansas, until I was about 13 years old, and right around 1979 or 1980, I started watching wrestling, and I was like every kid, every young boy around that age and that time, that everybody's favorite wrestler was Jerry Lawler, the King and all that. The funny thing is that right around the time, and I don't know why, but right around the time I started hitting puberty, I became a fan of Eddie Gilbert's. Just a complete change, and I don't say complete change in style, but just I gravitated to what I thought was cool, you know, and I followed wrestling for years and years and years and years, and I was working at the Madison Farmers Co-op in Jackson, Tennessee. It was a feed and seed store for the farmers in Madison County and surrounding areas, and they had a newspaper. They would take a newspaper, the Jackson Sun, here in Jackson, and they would put it down in the storeroom for the farmers to come read and everything. And I'd go down there periodically, and I think it was like a Saturday or something. And I went down there and I'd grab a section of the paper at a time. So when I'm not pulling orders, I'm just kind of occupying my time. And there was an article Doug Gilbert had put in, or somebody had written an article about Doug, and he had this guy. I forget his last name, but his first name was Yuji, and Yuji was from Japan, and he was coming over to the United States to get more acclimated to the United States style of wrestling, the more storyline driven, I don't want to say soap opera, but more of a storyline driven kind of work. And I read it, and he had opened up a wrestling school, and I'd made the decision that I was going to take the tax return money that my wife and I were going to get, and I was going to spend that money getting trained to wrestle.
Yeah.
And so I did, and Doug was back and forth to Japan, probably 2 to 3 times a year, probably 3 to 4 times a year by when I met him. And he and I trained a little bit, and I got to work out with Ricky Murdoch at the time, and I did a lot more in-ring training with Ricky. He and I would go over, holds and wrestling and bumps. And then when Doug would be there, be a lot of the same thing, but I got trained more in the back seat. That sounds bad, but riding in the back seat of Doug's car at the shows, and it was more of a psychology lesson.
Yeah.
Because you can do a whole lot of things doesn't mean that you should do a whole lot of things. As long as you've been around, you've probably heard Greg Anthony say 1,000 times, less is more.
Oh yeah.
You don't want to give them everything every time you go out there. If you're in there for longer than 3 weeks, you're not going to go out there and bust out everything you can do, because then what do you do the next week?
Yeah.
And that was pretty much it. My first match was, I was training that night in a place called Guys, Tennessee, at a bar, no less. And there may have been 10 people there, and I helped set up the ring, and I got in, and Doug and I were working out, and there was a couple other guys that were in there working out with me, and another guy that Doug was training. And I remember I was every weekend that I would drive to go train, I had a George Foreman grill, one of those little grills. I mean, like just pop it down, let the meat cook and all that. And I would pack chicken and bottled water because I didn't want to spend any money on the road, so I would eat, stuff I brought. And I remember, and it to this day I will never forget it. I'm going to the back of my truck to pull out, a thing of chicken breast. I'm eating on it, and Ricky Murdoch. I turn around, I see him, and at the time he's like 6'4". He's a big boy now, but he was about 6'4", about 275.
Oh yeah.
He comes walking out, and he just bellows out, "Hey man, you want to work? Where's your gear?" And I said, "Man, I ain't had time to get gear. I mean, been training for like 3 months, blah, blah, blah." And he said, "Well, somebody didn't show up. Come on, you're going to work tonight." And look, brother, I was older than everybody else I've seen start training. I was probably 27 when I started training.
Okay.
And I think it was around 27, something like that. And in my late 20s, getting close to early 30s or whatever. And it was 2001. The first match I had was in a bar the weekend before 9/11. And I was nervous. I was scared to death. And I was in there with Ricky Murdoch, who was, he's big guy. I didn't know how this was going to go. And we just went out there and we had a match. And brother, after that match, it was like one of the coolest highs I've ever experienced in my life. But yeah, my first match was in a bar in Guys, Tennessee, the weekend before 9/11. So there's that.
Alrighty then.
Right. And oh, by the way, to answer the question, I was trained by Doug Gilbert. So
Cool deal. Yeah, I know Doug, and I've met Doug quite a few times. I've met Tommy Rich quite a few times because they actually travel around together with each other now.
yeah. Interesting little story about that. Tommy was there that night. Okay. And I'm just starstruck, right? Brickhouse Brown is there, and I'm fresh in this thing, man. I'm still learning how to take bumps and hit the ropes right. So, blah, blah, blah. And I walk out to get the chicken. That was part of the story I left out. I walk out to get the chicken, and Tommy Rich screams, "Hey boy, you want one of these?" And he slides this van door open. And in this van door is a styrofoam igloo cooler full of Smirnoff Ice. Okay? I don't know if you guys remember Smirnoff Ice. And Doug's standing there with him, and Doug looks at him and goes, "Tommy, don't start on him yet. He ain't even gotten started yet. We wait until we start messing with him." "Oh, I'm sorry. You sure you don't want a beer, kid?" And the whole time I'm frozen. I'm like, you don't know how badly I wanted to go have a beer with Tommy Rich, and I wouldn't have ever had to wrestle. I got to have a beer with Tommy Rich. I was good, But yeah, Tommy was there, and I met Tommy a few times, and he's one of those guys that reminds me of, like, I don't say reminds me of, but like Jamie Dundee. For everything bad that people say about Jamie, I couldn't keep a smile off my face when Jamie Dundee was around. Those are Tommy and Jamie and cats like that. I got really privileged. I got really privileged to be able to spend time around those guys.
Oh yeah. So what exactly do you remember? What year you started?
2001.
2001.
Yeah.
Speaking of 2001, that's actually the next topic because I'm gonna go across a couple of shows or maybe companies you work for. The first one I actually stumbled across was, I believe it's NWA Main Event.
NWA, well, yeah, NWA Main Event. That was in Columbia, Tennessee.
Yeah, Columbia, Tennessee, and you faced Tony Falk.
Who?
Tony Falk.
What about him?
You faced him there?
Yeah. Yeah.
Not a subject you want to get into, I guess we could say.
Well, I mean, that's a whole mess of worms right there. I don't know how to approach. If you don't mind, I'd kind of like to move on to Tony Falk.
Okay. Well, while we're still on the subject of NWA main event, tell us about that. How you got into that?
Oh man, that was a killer. Little run. I rode up there with Ricky Murdoch because, like I said, Doug was either in Japan. Doug was getting booked in like New Jersey and just all over the place, right? So it was impossible. There's no way I'm riding to New Jersey on a weekend and having to be at work at 6 o'clock, Monday morning.
Yeah.
So they knew I was Doug's boy. And so it was like, okay, we know he can do a couple things here and there. And the first guy that I worked with was obviously going to be Ricky Murdoch. And Ricky, I don't, taking advantage is a bad phrase to use, but Ricky and I worked together before. So Ricky knew there were things he could do with me and quote unquote to me that I'm not going to complain about. I don't know how many times I took a superplex. Okay. My first 10 matches, I took a lot of them, but I rode up there with him one time. And, there was nobody there for me to work. I was just there hoping to get booked, whatever. And, I was a fan of a guy named Chris Champion. I don't know if you remember Chris Champion.
I've heard the name plenty of times.
Yeah. Chris had a gimmick that was called Sin. And it was a gothic, anti-Christian character.
Yeah.
And I wasn't the same person back then that I am now, so I kind of gravitated toward that a little bit. And so I was kind of like, oh man, there's another one of those guys that I used to watch. And so there was nobody there for me to work with. And so I'm sitting down and Ricky comes back in. He says, hey man, you're working Chris tonight. And my eyes, I got big, my jaw hit the floor. I said, well, I don't know if I'm ready. I'm just whatever excuse, right? And Chris comes in and it was cool because him and Tracy Smothers, God rest their souls, but they both said the same thing. It's like, hey man, what do you like to do? And I'm like, man, I whatever, just I can bump and I can sell. No, what do you like to do? I was like, I like to wrestle. And I remember Chris saying, so I ain't got to catch you? Like, man, I don't really want to fly unless you just really want me to. He says, no, fine. He says, so I ain't got to stand outside and you're coming over the top rope? I said, Lord, please no. And he goes, shoot, buddy, no problem. We're going to have a good time. And so I got to work with Chris a couple of times. And but the NWA main event was kind of like, I don't know, it wasn't fun. And that's one thing that Doug told me, that if I wasn't having fun or I wasn't making money, because it's really, really, really hard to do both. If you're not having fun or you're not making money, then you need to leave where you are. Do good business, but leave. And I was fresh into it, but I didn't feel like driving all the way up to Columbia, Tennessee to job out for $5 a trip. And that's what it was. The pay was $5 a trip. And the trip from Jackson to Columbia, Tennessee, if you take Highway 412, is a lot farther than what $5 in gas will get you. So
yeah,
I didn't stay there long.
Gotcha. The next company that I kind of went through YouTube, because I don't know what it is. Anytime you look up Jason Peter Rose on Google, it always just brings up Pete Rose.
Yeah.
More or less. So I hit YouTube and come across a couple of your early matches. Another company that come up, and I couldn't really tell if this is you or not, but the company is USWO.
That's me.
That would be you. And that was in
Yeah.
2002, right?
Yeah, I'm thinking a lot of the stuff that my early stuff is on Brian Turner's VHS Rehab on
Yeah,
YouTube.
that's where I found that.
Brian is a close personal friend of mine, and Brian is also one of the guys I was in the ring with when I got knocked out cold in a match. And it's on there, and you can see it, and I'm clearly out of it. But I ended up finishing the match. But yeah, USWO, that was pretty fun. It was pretty cool. I got to team with Tim Ernesto, and that was also the place where I cut my first promo. I did not want to speak. I did not want to talk. I wanted to be the technical wrestling version of Sabu. I didn't want to say a word. And I was teaming with Tim, and we had a manager named Kathy Owens, and we had won the belts, and a guy named Kroll, who was running the backstage and helping book, we won the tag belts, and Kroll comes up to me and he says, "Hey Void," because they called me Void, Void. They called me Void back then. "Hey Void, can you stick around for a little bit, man? We need to get a promo for the TV show." I was like, "All right." I said, "But is Tim going to do the talking, man? Because I really don't do well with talking." He said, "Yeah." He said, "Yeah, Tim's going to say everything. You just stand back, because we're heels." He said, "Just stand back and look menacing, no problem." And so Tim cuts his promo, and it's not good. Not good in the respect of what we were, the story or any kind of story that we were talking about, or what we were trying to accomplish. And I remember he's saying things like, "I've won a lot of championships, but this one for some reason seems much more satisfying." And he goes on this thing, and then I'm standing back, kind of looking up, and he goes, "So I'm going to turn the mic over to Void, and Void, I know you got something to say." And I'm sorry to cuss, but in the back of my mind, I'm going, "Oh shit, I've got nothing." And so I grabbed the mic, and the first thing, and it was the first promo, and it just freestyled. It was like, you can find it somewhere, Void Tim Ernesto promo USWO. And I got on and I said, if there's ever been a soapbox that I've ever been on in my life, it's anti-sports entertainment. And I guess freestyled or BS'd my way through the promo, and I saw the finished product later on, and they completely cut Tim's promo out of it. So I'm like, "Oh man!" And Kroll comes up to him and says, "Man, that was good. That was good. We're gonna have you cut one again next week." And I was, "Man, God, okay, fine." And then after a while, you couldn't get me to shut up on the mic, because I figured that if I could cut promos and tell a story, then I don't have to do nearly as much in the ring. So I'll talk more and work less.
Yeah.
And chain wrestling and promos prolonged my career by, like, I'd say 10 or 15 years, because I was too small to be a badass, and I could not fly, and I could not remember, calling 10 spots in the back for the first 3 minutes. I knew dick about that. I didn't know anything like that. That's not how I was trained, and that's not the way I wanted to wrestle. And so, so the USWO was fun because I learned a lot there. I learned a whole lot there. So there's that.
Alrighty then. Yeah, so there may be some in between with the next company that I may be missing or anything like that. But the next company I have on my list is LAW.
Oh,
in New Bern, Tennessee.
New Bern, Tennessee. The best match I ever had in my life was LAW, and it was against Derek King. And if you've seen the unedited version, the match, if you've seen the edited version, it was good. I would put that match, as far as quote unquote two local guys, I will put that match against any match that has ever happened in this territory, in this area, period. Okay. But the thing behind that was what made it so good was that John Michael put that together. John Michael booked the whole feud between Derek and I, where I was supposed to be this bounty hunter that Jeff Odell hired.
Okay.
And John had Derek and I don't know how many months, but John had it to where I think we might have been in the ring. Derek King and I might have been in the ring together twice, 2 times in a few months. And just the way it was put together and the way that I looked vicious in this. Interesting side note behind that match was that Derek and I was supposed to win the title. Okay, I was supposed to win the title, put Derek out, for a couple months or some kind of thing like that. And then Derek was going to show back up and we were going to restart it. So, not to tell tales out of school, but Derek and I were meditating in the truck, and I looked at him and I asked him, Derek, who's your hero? And Derek's hero, and he'll tell you, is Jerry Lawler. Mm-hmm. I said, okay, who's mine? And he said, Eddie Gilbert. And I said, okay. I said, when it comes to the big blow off, Eddie never really beat Jerry. I said, what if we do this? I said, you go over tonight, I disappear, people start attacking you, and then like Jerry would occasionally with like Bill Dundee or Eddie Gilbert, I'm going to call you back in, or you call me back in, and then I'm going to turn on you, just like Eddie would. I suckered you in, all this, I gained your trust, and I got you because you're a sucker, just like these people are suckers. I made you all believe, blah, 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 right? Mm-hmm. And so Derek and I said, well, okay, well, how do we do this? And Derek said, I don't know. He said, I don't know. I'll figure it out before match time, right?
Yeah.
And it was a street fight. It was a blow off, and it was all this crazy stuff, and we're sitting there watching the monitor, and he taps me on the shoulder and he smiles real big at me, and he nods his head, and I turned and I looked in the corner of the room, and there's a table, and I looked back at him and I smiled, and there was another smaller table over there, and he did that head nod thing again, and I said, okay. He said, come on, man. It's ECW. Dude, when he said that to me, I was ready to run through a freaking wall. There was nothing that was going to stop us from having the best match possible. And we went out there, and that was all Derek King. All Derek King. We had, I honestly, I just trusted him to call everything, because I knew with Derek King calling something like that, especially when it pertained to an actual feud and a blow off and what we had planned in the future, complete trust in that guy. And I knew it was going to be something really good. I didn't know how good it was going to be, but I knew that it was something different because I kicked out of super kicks. That's Derek's finisher.
Yeah.
I kicked out of multiple super kicks during that match, and to this day, I mean, I still get kind of chills talking about it. That was one of those, I won't say once in a lifetime things, but that was the best match that I've ever had. There was nothing that I could have had after that. The only thing that I would say is close to it was Eric Wayne and I against the Posse, and that whole thing that culminated in the House of Horrors match. And it's kind of funny because especially in that match, the better of friends that you are in wrestling, and this is odd, but the better of friends, the closer you are to the guys that you're working with, the more you beat the piss out of each other, and the more it looks real because you trust each other. And like, you get a good shot, and then all of a sudden, like, I'm gonna give you one. Like, okay, cool, I'm gonna give you one. And then you're sitting there, and by the time you're done, you're like, God, thank God we love each other, because that doesn't work on the street. But yeah, LAW was cool. And a little story about LAW. Ricky Hayes, I don't think he was in, I don't want to say financial trouble, but he needed, I guess, a loan or something like that. There was some kind of money involved. And I had just come into a little bit of money. And legally, by the way. And I'd just come into a little bit of money, and I went to Ricky, and, John Michael, once again, did the legwork for that. And I went to Ricky Hayes, and I sat at his dinner table. And I said, I'll tell you what, I will loan you this money with no interest, but I want John Michael as the booker. And if there are people that may have been, you can ask John. I'm sure Greg Anthony would remember, and there may be a Jeff Odell. But before John Michael was booking, 40 or 50 people, on a good night, it was like the local wrestling show.
Yeah.
After John Michael started booking, we were disappointed with 100 people. And that doesn't sound like a lot, but if you know that building, you don't hold much more than 100 people in there. And we were, I don't want to say doing things illegally, but sometimes there were, I accidentally sold more tickets. Sorry. And we had people in there. And then, as you and I talked before this, like, after all that, everything started going downhill. And, there was one guy that you talked about was running it. I love that guy. Cool dude. And then the next guy that was running it was a total piece of shit. So, there's that.
Yeah, I just, I don't know if you've seen the past 2 days. You brought up Derek King.
Yeah, I love Derek. Yeah.
Yeah. He's retiring.
Wait a minute. How old is Derek now? Do we have a round figure?
Ooh.
Yeah, he's in his 40s, right? He's probably early 40s.
I'd say something around there. Around there.
He told me in LAW that he was going to retire before he was 40. Ma, that's Derek. I'm kidding. I love Derek. But what were you talking about?
He's been doing some lives lately, and him and John Michael actually got on a live together last night and just kind of talked.
Yeah.
And I tuned in for the whole live, and it seems like he doesn't want to do it.
He doesn't want to retire?
It doesn't seem like it, truly deep down inside. I mean,
look, in ring, there's only so much your body can go through. But I would hate to see Derek step away from wrestling. Mm-hmm. Him and John Michael and guys like that. I wouldn't say running their own show, but I'm saying that if you had those two guys opening up a wrestling school, maybe, or putting, I don't want to say seminars, but being guest trainers at schools, I think you could do a lot worse than those two guys.
Yeah.
Because Derek is somebody that I don't know how to put it, man. I mean, you didn't have to think in the ring with him. And John is the same way. I mean, I worked opposite, I guess you'd call it. I worked opposite John a few times. Mm-hmm. And it was easy. I mean, and I don't know if you have that anymore. I don't know if you have that link between the old school and the new school. You don't really have that going anymore. You got guys that are, for the most part, they're good at running spots, and and they're respectful, but I don't know, man. I don't want to say there's no emotion, but there's no emotion anymore. You don't believe that that person is who they are in the ring, and that's kind of scary. You know, I mean, I had everybody. This is no joke. You're talking about USWO. Before I got to USWO, I was wrestling in a bunch of little small places in Mississippi. And I actually had these people believing that I had a baby coffin for a coffee table. They believe that.
Mm-hmm.
And I had all these people believing that I was, you know, this satanic or anti-Christian or whatever. Everybody believed that. And that's part of it. You know, nobody believes that these guys are, you know, some badass or this or that, because they, you know, they see them at the gas station. You know, they see them at, you know, the grocery store, and they're all just happy and smiling. And, you know, and I get it. You got to separate it from, you know, when you go to the show, you're this person. When you're out of the show, you're this person. But people knew I rescued animals and still thought I was a heartless bastard. So, I mean, apparently I was doing my job.
Yeah.
You know.
It's so something here recently actually just come up, something kind of like that happened. I don't know if you follow anything WWE or anything like that, but sort of kind of they debuted the trio, the Wyatt Six.
Oh God.
And then literally the same night
that night
they take a picture with the fan at Waffle House.
Right.
All of them together.
They killed their gimmick right there. You know, I think they should have left the Wyatt Six. I think they should have left that with Bray.
Yeah.
But I think that was probably the biggest mishandling of a potentially huge character that I can remember in wrestling. Bray Wyatt was a modern day Jake the Snake Roberts with a lot more athletic ability. There was something that everybody gravitated toward when he was the swamp preacher, you know, before it went to the puppets and all this other stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And I just really wish they'd left that with him, you know. But I mean, I'm not criticizing, you know, Bo Dallas or anything like that. I think there was another mishandling of talent. Curtis Axel was a mishandling of talent. Roman and Harper, huge mishandling of talent. But yeah, stuff like that, you just, I mean, you I guess because it's shoved down everybody's throat that it's a work, that nobody even wants to suspend their disbelief for a minute. You get into the storylines, you get into what's happening at the show. Like, fans know that everything hurts, but then, you know, they shake your hand. You know, the only one that I see nowadays that is that person 24/7 is MJF. MJF is a true throwback to what the heels used to be. I mean, he'll get up there and he'll sign autographs and he'll do all that, and he will roast you the entire time.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what you do. I mean, I don't know. But yeah, I remember that. I remember seeing that, and it, well, it's the kind of environment wrestling is in. And it's not even wrestling anymore. It's combat sports entertainment.
Yeah.
And that's my opinion, but it's not even, it doesn't resemble professional wrestling anymore. You don't have scientific wrestlers. You don't have the one thing that wrestling is really missing, and nobody thinks about it because everybody's forgotten about it, is scientific heels.
Yeah.
You remember that? Do you remember the Ted DiBiase's, the Arn Andersons, Tully Blanchard, William Regal, Dave Taylor, guys like that, guys that would isolate a body part, and that would be their heat. And now you got to, I don't know, you got guys in AEW that are taking tombstone pile drivers on the steps, and that's not the damn finish of the match.
Mm-hmm.
But you go to WWE, and they'll make an injury angle out of a pile driver.
Yeah.
You know, one group fills up 17,000 people, and one group can't fill up an arena of 5,000. You know, I mean, I don't know. I'm going on an old guy rant. I'm sorry.
No, it's all good. It's completely. So, what the one thing I do like to do with this is, I have a little bar on the side of my screen where I can actually bring up comments that people are commenting on our live.
Oh, dear God.
And we're going to go over two of them. One is actually from Peyton Minute. I don't know if you can see that or not.
I can, yeah. That little dude, yeah. I love Peyton. He he felt responsible for me getting hurt.
Yeah.
You know, like the night that I fractured the plateau of the tibia, he felt so bad for so long. I mean, I think there were like every other day, if not every day, he was messaging me and like, man, I'm sorry. I was like, no, dude, I did it. It was me, you know. But yeah, he is a cool kid. I had a whole program where I wanted to make him like just mean as hell, you know, where I was the heel, he was the baby face. You know, hurting him or whatever. And you know, like see, I told you they forgot about you when you left, and we didn't get a chance to play that out. So
oh yeah,
I got love for that kid. Yeah.
Oh yeah. Like he's like in his comment, he's putting you over.
Yeah. I appreciate it.
Oh yeah. We just got a third comment in, but the second comment is a buddy of mine. He's a high school buddy of mine. He's a big wrestling fan. He's never gotten a chance to get into it. I keep trying to tell him he needs to get into it because he got the body and the physique for it. But it just
Is
quick
it
question:
to tell a great story and perform a great story, or is it more important to the audience to believe what they're receiving? Oh, wow. The story to the audience is the most important thing because that's who pays the money to come see you do what you do. It takes two to tell a great story. Actually, it takes three. Your booker, the person you're working with, and you. For the first little while, if he were to become a wrestler, the first little while it's just being able to go out there and doing what you're told, so they know that you know what you're doing. But telling the story to the people is what draws the people in. If they don't believe, if they're watching a bunch of stunts and everything, kind of like what AEW is doing right now, you can see where that gets you. You can do all the crazy cool things, you know, that you've seen on video games, and then nobody shows up to see it because they've seen it.
Yeah.
You know, stories in like Memphis. How many luchadors did you see in Memphis during the heydays? None.
Yeah.
Florida, Bill Watts territories. You know, it's drawing the people in with what they are seeing. The problem is now it's all about the promos and the interaction backstage, and the in-ring action is kind of taking a back seat, I guess, to stuff like that. So tell the story to the fans because they're the ones that buy the tickets.
Mm-hmm. And the third comment is the gentleman we just was talking about, the trendsetter.
Oh, man, that
Mr.
guy sucks.
John Michael.
He sucks.
He commented.
No, listen to me. We're gonna start saying. Yeah, I've got a feeling that I know who he was talking to during that, but I'll let him tell it. A story about John was he goes to Derek, and I'm not sure that Derek was the person that said this, but I know he goes to Derek and he said, I think, we're going to start with something with JPR and blah, blah, blah. And Derek looks at him and says, where's his head at right now? Because you have to remember, I did not do myself any favors for years. The person in the ring was the person outside of the ring. I lived the gimmick and it was not good for me. But to be honest, it took John putting me at that point, and then it took Derek saying, okay, I'll work with him. And that was kind of the thing I wanted to prove, was that I wanted to prove to all these guys that thought I was just an absolute, because I was, an absolute horror show, that, oh yeah, I can wrestle and I can talk, so. But yeah, John did stuck up for me multiple times, because nobody trusted me, and within reason, they didn't trust me. I didn't give them anything to trust. So anything that retarded my development as a wrestler, or where I could have gone. I'm not saying I could have made any money, but I could have traveled the country on somebody else's dime. I could have gone to different states and worked in different places. No, I screwed that up. That was on me, purely on me.
Yeah. Well, we got a lot of interactions in this comment section. I tell you, again, Peyton again. Let you read that one out.
So aggressive. I
know that last part.
Yeah.
It's kind
as much as I would love to, when my wife took me to the emergency room when I got hurt, and I've been doing that I've been wrestling since, like I said, 2001, and it's, I think, coming up on 5 years that I was hurt in March. And she hated me to wrestle. She didn't like me going to shows. She didn't like me doing anything else. And I said, well, you need to put your foot down. You need to put your foot down. And so when we get out of the emergency room, after they take the morphine IV out of my arm, he looked at me and said, I'm putting my foot down now. So it would take something close to a miracle for me to even get close to anything in a show. She's the boss, dude.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
My wife runs my house.
Oh yeah. Yeah. I got married July of last year.
Yeah, so you already know, don't you?
Oh yeah.
It's better to let them handle the money. I mean, give me an allowance, let me spend some money on some things, and I'm good. Yeah. I don't need much anymore.
Also, my friend over here, he's got another comment that he wanted to go over.
Can't I don't understand the question. Is can't cut a promo to get you over, though? Is that what is he asking, the promo? Or
I guess it was a follow up from the your answer to the other thing. Is like,
he's asking me if a promo can get him over.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, absolutely it can. Absolutely can. That can be the start of you telling the story to the people. They have to be convinced that you are who you say you are. If you come out and say that, I'll take on anybody at any time and blah, 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 blah. The thing is, you can't go in there and wrestle the same kind of person that you are. You got to be ready to wrestle the big guys. You got to be ready to wrestle the small guys. But a promo will definitely get you over. But if all you can do is cut promos, then after they see you and all you can do is talk, well, hell, I don't know. That might not be a bad thing, because you can cut like the most fire promos and go out and lose every match, and you'll get a ton of heat because all you can do is talk. So the fans hate you because you talk so much smack, but you go out and lose every week.
Yeah.
That's brilliant. I mean, But let me also say this. If I had it to do all over again, all over again, getting into wrestling, I'd be a referee. I would be a referee. Referees get the main events. The referees get paid. The referees don't have to take nearly as many bumps. You get to work with if you're a really good ref, the main event people, the people they bring in, they'll want to work with you. Downtown Bruno, if anybody's got the game figured out, Downtown Bruno's got it figured out.
Oh, yeah, 100%.
I love that dude. And you know what? Everybody loves Downtown Bruno, but nobody remembers when he turned heel on me against Dale Wild. We just forgot about all that.
I just got done watching that. Literally right before we got on here. It was they inducted him to the Hall of Champions at the beginning.
Yeah.
And then
he turned heel on me.
He just turns heel on you.
And everybody forgave him. It's like, oh, well, it's Bruno. That's how much Bruno is loved. He can turn on the most babyface person in the promotion at the time. He comes back and everybody loves Bruno. Jeez. Yeah. Hard out there, man.
Yeah. Peyton with another comment. He's coming up. He's coming up with angles now for y'all.
Ooh. No, bro, that'd be too much. That'd be too close to the real thing, man.
Yeah. Yeah.
Drag me out by the ear. Now she can stand outside, grab the microphone. Get your ass in the truck now.
Yeah.
I appreciate the thought, but I get near a wrestling ring, it better be for training somebody or not getting near the wrestling ring. That would be it. My body's too shot now.
We have a Pro Wrestling Mid-South Academy. If you ever want to make a special guest appearance, teach some of the old or the new generation.
Well, they have a pretty decent teacher now. He might know a little something here and there. I don't know. Who's that guy ever beat, by the way. But no, seriously. I trained 2 people in my life.
No.
And Robbie Douglas and Anita Page. And Anita was trained, she was a manager. And she was with me and AJ Bradley. And she was trained as a wrestler to get her timing down so that when she was given a cue, she knew not to just stand frozen and then all of a sudden she jumps up. She knew what to do. But Anita had a couple of qualities that kind of took notice off me and AJ. She wasn't real hard to look at, So it's like, hey, she's with us. And so like women hated her because their husbands were looking at her. And then the guys hated us because she was with us. And so AJ and I and AJ was like my tag team partner. We never understood the whole thing about doing so many different tag team spots. We'd isolate the body part, cut the ring off, give hope, touch it off, hope, hot tag, ... finish. That was mine and AJ's match every single time out.
So we got John Michael again, and we're going to tamper off to the next topic. I know we kind of got off topics and stuff like with this comment section, but a lot of people are interacting. I want to try and get everybody's comment.
Okay.
But Mr. John Michael, that's the new comment.
A single guy. Who is Anita's favorite wrestler? Chase Stevens. Chase Stevens was Anita's favorite wrestler. Oh, yeah. What does he mean? Out of the 3 of us, I'm the only single guy.
They were talking about marriage and stuff like that, and he's now sitting as the only single bachelor, guy. Pretty much.
Well, John, as much as I love John was like the one that if people knew he was hanging out with us, they would try to save his soul, you know. And John will, drink a little bit, and he'll kick his heels up, but they would see John with us and go, "You poor soul, you poor soul," and he was like one of the like if we were in high school, you had the hoodlums, and we were the hoodlums, and John would be like the jock type that hung out with us, and understood why, we were having such a good time all the time, no matter where we went. God love him. You said something about topics.
Yeah, we're going to taper off with the next topic because he said, I announced it at the beginning of the podcast. He says BLS for life. Let's get into the founding of the Black Label Society.
Okay.
You, Robbie Douglas, AJ Bradley, and Anita. Let's get into that.
The founding was me and AJ.
Okay.
Everybody else came along later on. Sean Reed was in it for a real short time. Dude named Psycho was in it. Anita was in it. Robbie was in it. But it was me and AJ. And AJ and I got put together because I think it was his grandmother or his aunt or somebody worked at TDOT, Tennessee Department of Transportation, with Doug Gilbert. And AJ was on some of these shows that they weren't good. And so Doug talked to Ricky Murdoch, who was running with Alvin Minnick, and it was out of Humboldt, I guess their version of NWA Mid-South. And they stuck him with us, or stuck him in there with us, and he was young, and God bless that poor boy. We got to talking. We liked the same kind of music and this and that, and so we kind of ended up becoming a tag team. The thing was, we both knew people at the time, Burt Prentice was running in Nashville. And we had this idea that we were going to go to Nashville. And it was talked about. We talked about it with Burt one couple of nights, that we would come in and work with Chase Stevens and Andy Douglas, who were the naturals at the time. We were going to be the unnaturals. And Burt kind of, I don't know. I said, look at it though. They are like the prototypes. These big, jacked up, good looking guys. All the girls were just screaming over them. And then you had us. We were just gutter trash. And, we would come in and we would, work against them. And everybody would hate us and everybody loves them. And I said, it'd be easy. And that kind of fell through. And we were trying to come up with a name. And we both liked Zakk Wylde. And so the Black Label Society came about. And we decided to come up with a song. And it was a song called Reborn by Damage Plan, which was Vinnie Paul and Dimebag's band after Pantera. And we picked the song Reborn, and we didn't know it, but Zakk Wylde plays the solo at the very end of that song. It's like, oh man, cool, karma, kismet, whatever. But Anita wanted to get trained, and people weren't taking her seriously, and the guys that were willing to train her had other motives.
Yeah.
And so I said, okay, but you're going to do what I tell you to do, when I tell you to do it, blah, 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 blah. And you got to drive. And the story behind Anita driving was because AJ and I, we were not in the shape to drive. We didn't need to drive. I won't say that. It sounds, no, it is what it is. We had beers on the way up there, and I probably had more than beers at that time on the way up there. And so Anita was driving. And Robbie moved from California after he got through with the Navy and after he got through with things he was doing. He moved from California to Tennessee. And so Anita was gone because she was married to a guy named Sean Reed, Justin Kennedy. And so Robbie comes along, and I'm not ashamed to say it. I say I trained him, but it took 2 classes and the guy knew how to work. He was just focused. He was a student. He was a natural at it. And so we adopted, the Freebird rule, because 2 of us were more than likely going to be able to perform. In all likelihood, 1 of us wasn't. So we just put our names as Black Label Society, and all 3 of us could work. We just didn't know which 2 were going to work that night. And it sounds bad, and it is bad. And it's not professional. It's horrible conduct, and I get it. But, that's what I was doing back then. So.
Yeah. See, I had Poker Face on here quite a few weeks back, and, with them, their Naughty by Nature thing, I had to ask him. I said, how was it, because Naughty by Nature is a music group, and then Naughty by Nature is a trio. And he's like, he told a story like one time, like I guess they were showing up for a show or showing up to the building or something like that. And they had like before the NXN thing, the logo, they had the Naughty by Nature on their hoodie or something like that. And like some girls walked up to him like, "Oh, are you guys a part of the rap group?" And there goes, "No, that's our wrestling trio, pretty much."
Yeah. And that was completely accidental. I mean, we didn't mean for it to be, like a Naughty by Nature spinoff, which I mean, I guess we really didn't. But AJ and I got to work with Tully and Rude in Humboldt a couple of times.
Okay.
And Rude was one of my favorite people. I love Rude. No nonsense guy. He's not going to be apologetic for, if you ask him a question, be ready for the answer, and he's not going to be apologetic about his answer. The 3 of us got to work all 3 of them at a show one night, and I can't remember exactly where it was, but it was all 3 of them and all 3 of us. Which, if you also look at like West Tennessee, there was also the Missouri Bad Boys, which was but when I got in there, when I got into wrestling, it was Renegade, Mark Southern, and Joey Venture, managed by my good friend Cookie St. James. But there were a lot of trio tag teams, I guess you would say, where there'd be 2 guys on a tag team and 1 in singles, and it was odd because that little grouping made up for you could make a lot of different matches with you had 9 guys, and all of us could work. Some of us could talk, not everybody, but some of us could talk, but yeah.
We got John Michael commenting again. He said, "I thought Anita's favorite wrestler was Road Dogg." LOL.
Yeah. Yeah, John. Yeah, it was. All right, skip. Next question. Next question.
And this next guy, I wouldn't say he's a newcomer to Pro Wrestling Mid-South.
Yeah.
I'm gonna let you get through John Michael's comment for a second.
All right. Hey, there's a story I can tell you off camera.
All right.
Yeah. But okay, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Yeah. No, it's all good. Chad, I don't know if you've heard of Chad Austin yet.
I have heard of Chad Austin. I have.
Yeah, but he put John's poor soul. I guess it's because you had said something like, he thought that maybe you were going to say that Anita's favorite wrestler was John or something like that.
Well, I tell you, there are a couple of guys that I am interested in, or not. God, that sounded horrible. There are a couple of guys, I guess, to watch.
Yeah, you're gonna keep your eyes on.
Yeah, keep my eyes on. Chad Austin is one of them, and I heard that from John Michael.
Yeah.
From what I understand, and I'm not trying to tell his business, but from what I understand, Chad Austin would have fit in with Black Label back in the day. But Tyler B. Jordan. I saw him. I didn't even have to see how that guy worked. I have seen it now, but I did not have to see how that guy worked. And I wrote somebody and I said, I get a Doom vibe, a Butch Reed kind of feel from him. And there are guys like him, Chad Austin, the crew at Pro Wrestling Mid-South. And there's a guy that I really like, that if I had one good knee, I would try to get in the ring with him. And that's I mispronounce his name every time, but it's Toby Farley. If you don't know Toby is a legit. He's not from around the West Tennessee area, but there are some good guys like that. Toby is one of those guys. He is. He reminds me of the old school, lay it in and take it back kind of guy.
Yeah.
Not too long ago, I think it was last year or something. He worked with Rob Van Dam. And Rob not put him over in the match, but put him over as a worker.
Yeah, I think Toby Farley was a little bit before my time with Pro Wrestling Mid-South.
No, I don't think he's ever been there. He may have been like once.
Yeah. I think I've seen a graphic with that was NWA Mid-South back then, but
yeah.
But John Michael is in here. He said, "LMAO, love you, bro."
I bet you do put me on the spot like that, brother.
Yeah.
Anita's tattoo of never mind. Go ahead.
Yeah. The next guy that we have on here that I'm planning on reaching out myself to have on a podcast episode. I have his son Cordell coming up in the next couple weeks.
Yeah.
Is Big Red Robertson.
How am I doing, old man? God, that's the pot in the kettle right there, old man. Well, what can I say about Red? He's raising WWE superstars now, so he's doing better than we did, right? My little girls don't even want to go into wrestling. I can't believe it. No, and that's Red's part of that class that those guys that you kind of miss. I don't say kind of miss, you miss them. The locker room kind of guys. They're when I was coming up, you had, I won't say locker room enforcers, but you had locker room policemen.
Yeah.
Or people that made sure troublemakers didn't actually make trouble. And Red was one of those guys. Didn't really have to talk a lot. Didn't say a lot because he didn't have to. But I hope the best for you, dude. And oh man, hey, you ought to go back. I tell you what you ought to do, dude. You ought to go back and look at Red when he had hair.
I've seen a couple matches.
You seen the mullet?
Yeah.
Yeah. So there's that, Red. You and your mullet, buddy.
Yep. So my topics are kind of pretty much over with. So I know there's one thing that I did that we talked about beforehand that we were going to bring up, and that's you booked PIWF.
Yeah. All right. How much? I guess we got enough time for that. I'm not gonna. First of all, I'm gonna say that I'm not gonna knock anybody that's at that show right now.
Yeah.
But me booking at TIWF was like swimming in molasses up a hill. Uh, you had people that were favored there, and all right, since Randy Bird lied about me, I'll tell the truth about him. So I go in, and I'm just looking for a place to work. You know, I wanted to work with Chico Mendoza because Chico's a buddy of mine, and I was there before he was Chico Mendoza when it was when TIWF was running on State Street in Jackson, Tennessee. But anyway, I wanted to go in, and Chico and I were talking about booking, and they had somebody booking there, and this is what Randy Bird told me, and I will stand in his face and say that this is what happened, and he's welcome to debate me at any time with this. But supposedly, now this is what Randy said. I said something about booking. Chico goes to him, and he says, yeah. He said, well, we might need to try that out. I got to get rid of my booker. Well, his booker was Shannon Lee.
Okay.
All right. Shannon Lee was booking the show. His wife was either taking tickets or helping run the concession stand or something like that. And so Randy goes and tells everybody that I'm fixing to start booking. And I'd had plans for everybody. I told Shannon, I said, look, man, I said, I need you as a cruiserweight coach. You're going to be my perennial cruiserweight champion. Went to Chase McCoy and told him, I said, I want you to be my Dick Murdoch, my big badass, ass kicker. And the next week they didn't show up. And so the card was messed up, and I rebooked everything and talked to Chico. And the thing was, they had this guy named John Decker, John LaFont, whatever his name was.
Decker, LaFont.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I'll say this, he knows absolute shit about wrestling. He knows nothing about how to book, and I've got a story about that. So the main thing was that Randy wanted his locker room restored. And he had a lot of young people, and they were willing to listen. And so Chase, Shannon, and the wife didn't show up the next week. I don't know what's going on. All right, I got to rewrite the show. I don't know. I was like, okay, well, whatever. That happens to every booker. And so we booked the show out, and then book it again like the next week. And Randy comes to me and Chico in the locker room, and it's just the two of us sitting there talking about the next week. And Randy says, this is the first time in I don't know how long that my ticket money has matched my concession stand money. And hell, I don't know. What does that mean? He said, somebody was stealing. So he basically, in front of me and Chico Mendoza, said that the family was stealing from him, like the wife was stealing or something like that. So I got rid of them. So I had all these ideas, and Randy would keep like, I don't know. I said, look, man, you need heels as champions. Baby faces have to chase the heels. They're chasing the heels for the championships. It's a story. It's a struggle. And eventually the baby face wins, or they don't, no matter. Yeah. Well, T-Pain was the champion at the time. And T-Pain, I don't know if it's his business or he runs it or whatever, but it's Abel's Towing. And T-Pain was, because he was getting service calls all the time. He was late getting there. And so I talked to him. I said, look, brother, I said, because he wouldn't be able to show up one week, and he would get there late, and he'd come in his work uniform and dirty. I said, hey, brother, look, what do you think about me taking the title off of you for a short time period? I said, what I want to do is have you slip on a banana peel in the weeks after that. And I said, then your dad gets in the ring when you just look dejected. You're just upset. You don't know, my God, I don't know what I'm doing wrong. Your dad comes in, grabs the mic and says, part of a father's job is to know when his son is struggling. Yeah. Me and you need to go home, crack open a couple of beers, and me and you need to talk. We don't see T-Pain for a few weeks, and then all of a sudden T-Pain comes back obsessed. He doesn't care who has the title. He doesn't care who he's mad at. I said, it's going to be kind of like a Stone Cold character. You're in this for you because you've put this promotion on your back. And I sold him. He's like, cool. And so I'm writing the show out. It's 3 minutes until bell time, 7:57. 3 minutes till bell time. And I happen to look over my shoulder and I see Randy Bird talking to T-Pain. T-Pain's already said, like, yeah, man, it'll give me some time to free up, and like, man, I'm sorry. I said, no, dude, I understand, you're doing what you got to do. And so I see Randy over there talking to T-Pain, and he's got his hands out, and he's doing like this. And I look over at Randy, I said, what's up? And Randy turns around and looks at me and says, I'm talking to him. I say, well, is it about the show? And he said something, and I walk outside, and I'm talking to Chico, and I'm getting mad, and Chico's trying to calm me down, and I'm still getting mad. Randy comes out. I said, I need a champion that's going to be here every week, or at least a champion that's not going to say he's here, and he gets called away to work. I said, until the schedule clears up. Randy Bird looked me dead in my eyes and said, well, he's been here longer than anybody else, and he's been one of our mainstays, and if he doesn't want to lose, he doesn't have to. I said, man, F it, screw this. I walked into the locker room. I said, y'all do this shit on your own. I'm done. Took my pen, threw it up against the wall. I'm out, and I left. And the reason I talked about John Decker was because I finally got him to take the titles off this group called High Society that he was managing. Yeah. Right, and this is what this guy knows about managing. He walks out, he's got his baseball cap on, he's got his cheap slacks, his cheap shirt, his cheap shoes. He walks out, he slaps hands with the fans. He's managing the tag team champions, right? Then he turns around and comes back to the damn dressing room while the people he's managing are in the damn ring. He just walks out and slaps hands and comes out. And then when they take the little promos or whatever, the little interviews they put on YouTube, then John talks.
Yeah.
Okay. So I finally got the belts off these guys. And I'm wanting to say Ethan Steele and somebody else were the guys that I got them put on. And so John and I agreed to book half and half. I'll take second, you take first, blah, 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 blah. This moron, the week after we got the belts taken off, he puts the tag team champions into matches with different tag team partners, and they go under. And I was like, man, what in the hell are you doing? He said, what do you mean? I said, our tag team champions went under us in different matches. Why did you do that? What's the point? He said, well, they lost because they weren't with their regular tag team partners. I was like, dude, what the hell sense does that make? Mm-hmm. I said, God, man, you guys don't know shit. And Randy likes to say, well, TIWF has run this amount of time and that amount of time. And he used to love it when he'd say they put 500 people in a building. Mm-hmm. But then ask him how many comp tickets they had. He didn't want to talk about that. And I remember there was somebody that was working TIWF that came to work for Pro Wrestling Mid-South, and I forget who it was. And I said, hey, man, is Randy Bird still withholding pay one weekend out of the month? I said, well, we're not paying anybody next week. You can come work if you want to. Is he still doing that? And this was years after I left. And he said, yep. So here's Randy Bird, who will talk about how long TIWF has been running.
Mm-hmm.
My answer to that is, TIWF has been around a long time, but so is crack cocaine has been around a long time too, and ain't neither one of them worth a shit. He goes in there and he lets people do what they want to do, and every once in a while he'll get a booker in like Sarge O'Reilly, or he'll get like somebody else, but most of the time it's somebody like Galen Ray, or more of the buddy system thing. Like Randy used to love to walk out with people. He walked out with me and Mark Southern, and we had like an entourage, and here comes Randy with us. I'm like, what the hell's he doing with us? But yeah, the whole thing with TIWF was booking wise was that I just wanted to be able to book in a place where you could start from scratch, you could make ideas. And I mean, I'll admit I was taking a lot of stuff from John Michael, but Jesus, man, I got ulcers from booking in that place maybe less than a month. And then that guy has the nerve to tell Simon Reed that, well, we had void booking for a little while, but the fans didn't like what he was doing. And I said, you lying sack of feces. I said, man, and I told Simon what really happened. He said, I figured that's what was going on. Mm-hmm. Randy's one of those kind of people that runs a show so he can have people hang around him and so he can make money off the boys. Like, for instance, do you know who Zay Washington is?
Yes. They come and work for Greg with his brother, I believe. It was actually his blood brother. Yeah.
Well, I had an idea with them that I was going to put basically every title in TIWF on them. The tag belts, everything except the championship belts. And then Randy Bird said, well, we can't have people in TIWF holding multiple titles. Like, why? These are the most two over guys you've got. They're heels, they're young, they're black kids. You're in a primarily African-American area. This would be the people that you put belts on.
Yeah.
They're young, they're charismatic, they're athletic, they listen. Put everything on them. He didn't want to do it. And, there aren't a lot of people that I dislike after I got out of wrestling, but that guy is definitely one of them. Him and John Decker both.
Yeah. I didn't like, there was a show quite a few years back in Humboldt. I can't remember who that guy was. It was something Michaels or something like that. I can't remember if it was, I can't remember what his daggum name is that ran it. But John Decker and High Society was there too.
Yeah.
And stuff like that. And they were, the probably not even the handful of times that I went there and just kind of watched and stuff like that. I didn't want anything. Want anything to do with it.
No, of course not. I mean, because those are the guys that they want to run a wrestling show to say they run a wrestling show.
Yeah.
I mean, and to go out and basically have it like a party. They want an excuse to act like juveniles for the next, however many weeks this show runs.
Yeah, I kind of have my opinions on TIWF now because of kind of how they've done Greg.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, and I don't know the infrastructure there. I don't know who's behind it. I don't know. I mean, if Randy Bird's still there, then it's shit.
I really don't think they know.
They don't know?
I really don't think they know. I hear like I like Blaze. That's where he's at right now with TIWF.
Yeah,
they're doing a benefit show today because his girlfriend, I think it was her grandmother or something like that.
Yeah,
that's who the benefit's for. And I told him, I'm cool with you doing that and all that kind of stuff. But he does Osceola on Fridays.
Yeah.
So I gave him the concession for this with it being a benefit show and everything like that. But I'll ask him because he knows he keeps up with all these local companies. I focus on one thing, and that's Pro Wrestling Mid-South because that's what I'm a part of.
Right.
I ain't got time to worry about, hey, what's the company down the road doing.
Exactly.
Yeah, as far as I know, TIWF, one minute I'm getting told it was John Decker that was booking. Next minute I get told T-Pain was booking. Next minute I get told John Decker's booking again, and it's they don't know. And like you were saying, they put over that they've been in business for so long, but they haven't had a consistent the same guy booking for so long.
Well, the only reason they're still running is because the either I don't know how true this is, but I think Randy Bird owns that building. Either that or the rent is like $200 a month. And
I was also told that it's because there ain't jack shit to do within a certain mile radius of that place.
Well, no, but I mean,
yeah.
Could you stand to go see the same damn show week after week after week? And the problem is, I guarantee you, I could pull a few people from that show, like J Rage. J Rage, I worked with him a few times. Never had a problem out of him. I mean, he could go, but I mean, because he understood, okay, my heat is, I'm going to take your leg or your arm and I'm going to work on it. And the majority of the heat is going to be you being in 4 or 5 different arm bars, or you're going to be in the middle of the ring with your face up selling. That's my heat. I'm not trying to get you to catch me. I'm not trying to get you to go through tables and chairs and all that other crap. But, they go to those places because they're complacent. They stay there because they're complacent.
Yeah.
Like somebody like Zay Washington. Did you ever see Zay Washington versus Blake Christian?
There's a possibility. I've seen a lot. Yeah.
Zay was one of those guys that Blake Christian, I mean, you know who he is, right?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
I mean, you're talking about an athlete. I mean, it's not my kind of wrestling, but you're talking about an athlete. Well, who are they going to put him in the ring with? They put him in the ring with Zay and did very well. I mean, Zay showed that he can go. I worked out with Zay a few times in the ring. He can wrestle. That's one of those guys I don't understand why he hasn't gone a lot more places and done a lot more stuff. Like not just in the surrounding areas. I'm talking about he's a guy that could go across the country and do stuff.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah. Whenever him and his brother come work for Greg, I saw I think they were as soon as they come in, they were Legends Alliance Tag Team Champions.
Yeah.
Greg saw the potential.
Yeah.
But before we continue on with it, and you're probably the same way I am, because I've said this in the past podcast, stuff like that. If anybody has a problem with anything that me or my guest or anything like that said, our Facebook Messenger is wide open.
Yeah, please, I dare you. I mean, nothing I said isn't the truth.
Yeah. Yeah, because I know there's somebody going to be like, send this to somebody at TIWF and be like, hey, you see, they talked about you. And stuff like that. So,
yeah. I'm Randy Bird and John Decker. That's who I'm talking about. Not the people there. Randy Bird and John Decker. Those stories are true. There is nothing that I said that was a fabrication.
Mm-hmm.
So, you want to dispute it? Want to debate it? My phone number has been the same for over 20 years. My Facebook Messenger is wide open. If you don't want to get in touch with me, get in touch with Cody.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Yep. Now I've only been in the business 10 years. I've never wrestled, but I have, audio announcing, just recently become Ripley branch manager. I've been around it long enough. And I said, I'm good enough with, if you got heat, my messenger's wide open.
Right. Yeah.
But we got a couple more comments. Red Robertson, of course, said thanks. That's all he said was thanks on his mullet, I guess.
Yeah.
The next one is John Michael.
You were the Triple H. You were the Triple H. You were the one that smoothed everything over when we screwed up. So that's the truth, Cody. I'm telling you, that's the truth. John Michael was the Triple H of our group because there was always somebody drunk or passed out or chemically imbalanced, and John was there to smooth it over.
Yeah.
The wheel man, John Michael. Yeah.
Well, I think there's one more thing you kind of want to talk about because I know you said you got to be out of here at 3:30.
Yeah, I got dogs and cats to walk.
Yeah,
I don't walk my cats, feed them.
Yeah, I think the one thing that you wanted to go over also is what's missing from professional wrestling today?
That people don't believe that the guys in the ring are who they say they are. You know, we talked about the Wyatt Six thing, right?
Yeah.
And so there is the desire, and rightfully so, to get through the spot that's been called. But you don't believe that that person is who they say they are in the ring. Mm-hmm. You know, the intensity isn't there. You know, there's not that. I made, you know, like I said, I made people believe that I had a baby coffin for a coffee table.
Yeah.
You know, when I first started, I made people believe that, you know, I legitimately hated Jeremy Moore when he and I were in the ring together. And part of that was because I used to hate Jeremy Moore, but that's a long time ago.
Yeah.
But when Greg Anthony and I, when I first got to Mid-South, when Greg Anthony and I stood in the ring, and I stated that I was the man of the people, or the Dusty Rhodes kind of thing. I was the blue collar champion and all those things, and you don't know what it's like to be any of us, and blah blah blah. It looked like exactly what it was. You know, I didn't bother to tell the people that I live in a brick house, in a 3-bedroom brick house that sits on 70 some odd acres of farmland, and you know, and all that kind of cool stuff, and all the private land that we're surrounded by. You know, mm-hmm. I made them believe, and I went to work every day, just like I said I did. But if you can't make them connect with you, the intensity that you show isn't there. And too many heels want to talk down to the crowd. They want to engage the crowd. They want to depend on the crowd to get their reaction.
Yeah.
There was a moment that when Cody James and I were walking out.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I told him, I said, we don't point at the crowd anymore. We don't start hurling insults. We look at them and we scowl at them. And we let them know they should be happy that they get to see us. But if they've got a problem, we can step outside about it. Right? And so Cody was, you know, fresh into the heel role and everything. And I remember we walked out and we got a pop. And I turned around and I looked at him, and he's still got his face, you know, he's still, you know, stone-faced and everything. I said, now you've got to work. He goes, I know. I said, that's a pop. I know. We don't want a pop. We want them to boo us. I said, you got to be, because I was his second. I was his coach.
Yeah.
Said, you have got to be nasty.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, stick a thumb in the eye, hit somebody, turn the referee's attention, you know, give them a shot, whatever you got to do, but you've got to be dirty. But don't engage the people one time. And I'm telling him all this as we're walking down, and so we're starting to get introduced, and he says, God, man, I don't want to engage the people. or I want to engage the people, because he wanted that natural, like, first time heel. I want to argue with the crowd. I said, no. I said, ignore them. I said, if you ignore them, the louder they scream at you and you're still dirty, they're going to get madder.
Yeah.
And so he did what I suggested. And we went back. He goes, that was the easiest thing I've ever had to do in my life when it comes to wrestling. And like I said before, you'll hear Greg Anthony and you hear all these old heads say, less is more. If Cody had turned around and I didn't tell him this, but my thinking was, if Cody turns around and engages the crowd and tell them, I don't need you cheering for me, I said, well, then the babyface has got to stay down and sell just a little bit longer. And what if this babyface gets up and tries to cut you off? Then you got to work to cut them back off. So you lose timing and you lose the story in the match.
Yeah.
And so, you know, that's one of the things. And one of the other things that's missing is veterans that still want to pass advice without being condescending.
Yeah.
Because there are a lot of veterans, and I read a post from one of the guys today that falls into this category, that will talk about rookies and greenhorns and people paying their dues, and people don't know about paying dues anymore. And the funny thing is, almost none of these guys that say that crap now were willing to get into a car 4 deep and have everybody get paid $10 and expect to get back home and maybe grab something to eat if you're lucky. You know what I mean? Yeah. These guys that talk about loading up cars and going to these shows, well, you had shows lined up after that. Mm-hmm. I mean, kids nowadays, not call them kids, for the most part, these guys have, you know, young families. They're working 50, 60 hours a week to pay bills. You know, yeah, they want to wrestle, but don't sit there and tell them well, kid, you know, you didn't pay your dues, and we'll pay you when you start paying your dues. Like, dude, you know, shut the hell up. And the guys that say things like that, and you know, the greenhorns and stuff like that, and you know, if a veteran's giving you advice, then you need to listen, are the same guys that will tell you, well, if they're not paying me, I ain't telling them shit. Like, you just contradicted yourself. And people that, you know, would talk about, you know, well, we had so many titles, and there was one guy in particular, same guy. Mm-hmm. One guy in particular said, yeah, me and my tag team partner, we decided we had so many tag team belts from other promotions that we started dragging a red wagon because we were over. And I just said to him, well, me and AJ Bradley didn't need tag titles to get over. So we didn't need a damn red wagon. Yeah. And we didn't need a guarantee. And we didn't, you know, well, I've put my time in, so I deserve a guarantee. You talk about being all over the country and wrestling in different countries, and yet you're on the same show as somebody else that's been in 3 years, and you're drawing 50 people and nobody's there to see you. Yep. They're not humble anymore. You know, they're not humble vets, like guys like Tracy Smothers. God rest his soul. Oh, that's what's missing. That's what's missing from wrestling now. Or there aren't enough Tracy Smothers in this business. And when Tracy was alive, there weren't enough Tracy Smothers in this business. Mm-hmm. Guys like, I think he's coming up next week, Alan Steele.
Yep.
There aren't enough Alan Steeles, Poker Face, Rude, Tracy Smothers. There are not enough of those guys. Those guys, John Michaels, you know, guys like him and Christian and cats like that, there aren't enough of those guys in there anymore. Mm-hmm. Because, to be honest, it doesn't resemble wrestling to the old heads. And so you just kind of look, and I mean, if the majority of the matches are, you know, sit down power bombs and stuff like that, I can't relate to that.
Yeah.
You know, even in my younger days, I mean, no, we're not doing a lot of that. We're not. We'll do it one time, and that's the end. That's the last part of the match. But no, it's like we talked about. You get people that are pile driven on the ring apron in the first 4 or 5 minutes of the match. Yeah. Give me a scientific heel, and then you'll have wrestling back. But yeah.
Well, I'm about to have to let you go get off of here, but of course we'll do a part 2. Well,
Yeah, I'm up
we got
for
quite a
it.
few people.
Yeah.
I was talking to John Michael last night about it.
Yeah.
Probably the next one I'll have you on is going to be John Michael's up for it. You're up for it. And if I got to get a hold of AJ Bradley, but we may get all 3 of you guys at once.
Good luck. Good luck getting a hold of AJ Bradley.
Yeah.
I love him. He's my boy, but man, look, man, that dude's got more kids than Jamie Dundee. I mean, Jesus. I'm kidding.
Yeah.
I don't know how many Jamie's got, but anyway.
But just kind of temper off, just 2 quick things to go over. Something else, I kind of want you to put it over too, because we have this problem all the time. You were talking about, making it believable again.
Yeah.
Tell the young guys. We have a problem with the Pro Wrestling Mid-South. I'm pretty sure other companies have. Not to put words in your mouth, but tell the young guys, especially heels, don't go out into the audience interacting with them.
There's no need for it. I mean, if you have to approach a fan to get them to interact with you, you're not doing your job. You're not.
I'm talking about like not even if they're in a match.
No,
like if they're
going out into the crowd during the show.
Yeah.
Who in the hell has to be don't go out? And who has to be told don't go out into the crowd during the show?
You'd be surprised. You're on the Academy page, right?
Do what now? The Academy page?
Yeah. So after we get done with this, you may want to go on there, but yeah, we get it all the time. Blaze tries to do it and stuff like that, but
that is the absolute. Well, I'll say it like this: that's the dumbest shit you could do as a heel. That's dumb. Baby faces, I could see it only during intermission. Heels should never, ever, ever be in the crowd at any time. When it's time to report back to the dressing room, go to the dressing room. If you need something to eat, send somebody to get it.
Yeah.
You should not make yourself personable. You are a heel. You are a bad guy. Jesus Christ. Okay. Yeah, don't do that.
And like I said, it's not just Pro Wrestling Mid-South. I'm pretty sure it's other companies too.
Yeah.
That run into that problem where it's like, okay, you just wrestled the match as a heel, but now during the intermission, you're in the audience talking to your girlfriend or your friend or something like that.
That's why I just told you. Remember, we talked about, in my opinion, wrestling is dead. Mm-hmm. Pro wrestling is dead. It is combat sports entertainment. Mm-hmm. It's not even sports entertainment. Because in sports entertainment, you at least had some sort of scientific wrestling. You don't have that anymore.
Yeah.
Now, I'll tell you this, and I hate to be that guy, but God, if I was at Pro Wrestling Mid-South and heels were out in the crowd at any time, we'd have a problem. Now, you might come out on the winning end of that confrontation, but then again, you might not.
Yeah.
No, we would have a problem. And you ask any of the old heads when it was still pro wrestling, heels didn't even go out to sell their gimmicks. If you had gimmicks as a heel, you had somebody at the table. But there were I knew shows that wouldn't allow the heels to sell gimmicks.
Yeah.
And then the smart heels would have, if there's a story that Colonel Parker from Elvis's manager.
Yeah.
Colonel Tom Parker.
Yeah.
He had I hate Elvis stick pins printed. Mm-hmm. So people that hated Elvis would buy those pins, right? Mm-hmm. So I knew guys in Columbia, Tennessee that would have merchandise that said, I hate so-and-so. And they were the ones selling it. And they sold, I mean, they wouldn't have, them out there selling it. They'd have somebody sitting at the table and they would rack up in money because they were the big heels. And I hate these guys. And I'm buying stuff that says I hate them. And so they were turning around giving money to them. Jesus Christ.
Yeah.
Jesus, man.
Like I said, it's been a problem. Greg gets on them. Blaze gets on them. I've gotten on them a couple times. I'm pretty sure John Michael's got on them
Send them
about
home.
it.
Send them home. Send them home. Don't let them come back for a couple of weeks.
Yeah.
And then when they try to find somewhere else, they can go to the TIWF or someplace like that, and then see how much wrestling sucks when you're not at a structured show.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's dumb. You shouldn't be told that. That's stupid.
Yeah. Well, the last thing is this last comment, John Michael, once again.
Oh, well, I started training jiu-jitsu again. And I was in there with a guy who was a college wrestler and a purple belt. And through no fault of his own, was grabbing a handful of my beard at the time, multiple times, and ripped part of it out. And so if I'm going to stay training, I'm going to be beardless. So, yeah, that's it.
Yeah.
It's for practical purposes.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Well, like I said, I'm gonna let you get off of here.
All right,
it was
brother.
Great talking to you.
Hey, man, thanks for having me.
It's no problem at all. Like I said, we're going to do a part 2, or maybe have you and John Michael on here, because John Michael really wants to get on here with you. As you can see in our comment section.
Yeah.
John Michael's commented a lot, but
yeah.
Do you have any final words for the great people watching this?
Man, for wrestlers, for the younger guys, you get told to stay in the gym. Stay in the gym does not mean get shredded. Keep yourself in some kind of shape. But more than anything, stretch, stay flexible. Yoga. You laugh now, but when you're 50 years old and you have to wear knee braces to work, you'll understand. And trust me, that's where I'm at right now. So
yeah, Greg is a big on yoga. Greg is huge on yoga.
I'm not saying that, you have to be a teetotaler and have to be a, straight edge or anything. But when it's time to do body maintenance, guys, girls, please take care of yourself so you're not walking hunched over in your 40s and 50s.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah, and don't do meth.
Good word of advice. Good word of advice from Jason Peter Rose.
Trust me, it's not good.
Yeah. Well, brother, I'm guessing I'm gonna go ahead and get you back in the backstage area. We may talk a little bit after the outro plays, but it was, like I said, it was great talking to you.
All right, brother, I appreciate it.
No problem. All right, then, ladies and gentlemen, that is episode number 7 with Jason Peter Rose. Next Sunday, don't forget, we have All That Alan Steele going to be in the Mid-South Wrestling Center. Also, don't forget that every Monday at 10 a.m., each podcast will be available on Spotify, Audible, Amazon Music, and iHeartRadio. Hope everybody can tune in live next Sunday with All That Alan Steele. If not, like I said, Spotify, Audible, Amazon Music, and iHeartRadio. It will be available next Monday. Hope everybody has a great rest of their day, and see you next Sunday.